Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to your very own BYJU'S 9th and 10th grade channel. I'm your biology teacher Aishwarya, and in this particular class we are going to be looking at the top 15 most important subjective questions from the chapter Life Processes. Now, of course, on a board examination front, as we all know, this right here is very important because clearly when you talk about subjective questions, it includes your 2-mark questions, your 3-mark, you have case-based questions coming in as well. And of course, today we are going to particularly tackle the 2-mark questions and of course, how we can write the answers. So today's class is going to be very important because of course, it is going to be helpful for your board examinations. But of course, students, on an immediate point of view, you have your periodic tests coming in, you have your unit tests and everything coming in, which is why this class is going to be important. Now, of course, I understand the value of time, which is why in our class, because it's 15 questions, right? I am going to maybe spend about 30 minutes, not more than that, right? I'll not take more than 30 minutes for 15 questions. I don't want to spend too much time. Today is just going to be about revising these questions. Now, of course, as we all know, Ankita ma'am has taken the class on objective questions already. Today, we will be doing subjective questions so that you get an idea of, say, if you have to write the same answer, how will you do it, right? So what do I request all of you to do? I request all of you to have your notebooks and your pens ready with you, right? Please have your textbooks open with you. Yes, because it's going to be very handy. And wherever I tell you to make an important point, important star mark, right? Please put a star mark there. Yes? So everybody, as you all know, right? I will tell you one more time, objective questions have been done. So you can check it on the channel. Secondly, for all my students out there, competency questions we will do. But in our class today, we will be doing PYQs. We are doing previous year questions. This is very, very important, right? Assertion reason ke liye we will do a separate class, right? So first today, let's focus on the PYQ questions, right? Now, as you all know, students who are here, who are very regular on the channel, you know how we do it. But of course, if you are very new to our channel, this is a timetable that we follow where of course in this week there has been a slight shift where I'm taking this class on Thursday. But normally, as you all know, biology classes happen every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and most importantly for 10 standard classes happen at 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. right? So every day you have classes coming your way, and all you need to do, if you need to know which class is happening when, then all you need to do is not to forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel so that you get notifications. And do not forget to share this video with your friends also, because this right here will definitely be helpful for all the students who are watching it much later. Now, students watching the video later after the live stream, don't worry. Make sure that when I'm taking the question, you pause the video, try to answer it yourself, and then see how the answer is written, right? And of course, as we all know, students, we have completed life process chapter, right? We have done in-depth modular sessions for all of you, starting with introduction to life process all the way till we have, excretion done in one shot. Objective questions are available. Now, if you want chapter summary, there is an older video of mine on the channel. Top 20 questions, both objective, subjective, done by Ankita ma'am. All of this is available, right? So students, are we all ready for today's class? Yes? Are we ready? Do you have your notebooks, your pens, your textbooks? Now, sincere request that I have in my class, right? So very sincere request, and I would not call it rules and regulations because that feels very heavy, but please understand that when we are solving a question, first I will be reading the question out, right? And then of course for students watching this video later, this is your request as to pause and give me the answer. Now, student who are there available on the live chat, right? I know you have a lot of doubts as well. Now, whenever I have relevant doubts, yes, whenever for example, for a question, if for example, the question is based on digestion and you're asking me a doubt which is based on probably transportation or excretion, I may not take it immediately. So in between, I will take doubt boards also. Right? But let's also keep it streamlined and try to focus on the question that we have. So Shabad, as I know that you have some doubts, I have a question based on that. So we will take it up there, right? Now, of course, for all of my students, I request you not to spam, kindly not have parallel conversations, right? At the moment, if you do not feel like, this is for the live students, in case if you don't feel like paying attention in class right now, there is no You know what you say, no compulsion. You can come and watch this video back later, but kindly requesting all of you to please make sure that you do not spam on the chat. Sorry, Shabad. I said Shabad, sorry. Shabad, please don't spam. Yes? Okay, ma'am, why won't you reply? I will reply to your comments, right? I will definitely reply. It's not that I won't, but I request all of you to not unnecessarily spam because your time is valuable at this point, right? Okay, Shabad. I'll keep that in mind. Moving on to question number 1, everybody. Let's not waste time. Let's get started. Question number 1 on your screens now. This is there in your CBSE 2023 PYQ, right? Now, these are subjective questions, so I cannot be really doing, I'll not be able to do polls, but I request you to give me the answer in the live. Students watching it much later, please pause this video and try to write the answer yourselves. Yes? You guys also write the answer. Don't just type it in the chat and leave it as it is. Okay? Name the type of blood, both oxygenated as well as deoxygenated, transported by each of the following by mentioning the path. That is from one organ to the other. Right? Now you have vena cava and you have pulmonary artery. Yes? So now, of course, as we all know, right, this right here, we are talking about 2 blood vessels, which are the vena cava and the pulmonary artery. Now, normally, what are arteries? We know that arteries are nothing but blood vessels that primarily transport your oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. But in this case, we see that the vena cava and the pulmonary artery both transport your deoxygenated blood. Right? So we see that they transport deoxygenated blood. Now next you need to tell me from where to where. Very good. First part of it you've all got the answer. So I am going to give you 1 mark for this. Next, what are we going to do? Right? Next, what is it that we are going to do? Identify the direction in which they are transferred. Right? So that is the next part of the answer. So I can see the answer coming in my way. So let me write this down in another color. Now, when you talk about the vena cava, we know that the vena cava is one of the largest veins in our body. We have 2 types of vena cavas. We have superior and inferior, right? Now, the superior and the inferior vena cava bring the deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body, right? From different parts of the body to the heart. Right? So they bring it to the heart, and specifically here we need to be specific. We are no longer in 7th grade just mentioning heart and everything. We have to be specific, right? So which part of the heart receives the deoxygenated blood? You will have to mention the chamber, right? So here you will have to write the right atrium, right? The right atrium receives it. Yes? Now from here you will have to mention that right atrium of heart. Be as specific as you can in biology. Yes? Now, of course, the next thing is pulmonary artery. Where is pulmonary artery going from? Next up, pulmonary artery is there. Your pulmonary artery is going to transport blood from the right ventricle, right? So, from right ventricle, it will transport it from right ventricle to the lungs, right? And in the lungs, oxygenation takes place. Very good, Ansh. I'm very proud of you. Yes? So as you all know, this is how you're going to write the answer. Now these are all 2-mark questions, okay? Now your 2-mark questions are very scoring, to be honest. It's not very tough, but here they could also be little strict with the correction because you will have to be specific. So in this case, we see that the type of blood that is transported, right? So first part of it, of course, I'm just going to scratch it and write it. The type of blood transported here they have mentioned, right? So in this case, as you can all see, the vena cava carries deoxygenated blood from. See, you have to mention the from and to. You can't just do different parts, arrow this, right? Don't do that. Write from and to. Yes? So here you will get 1 mark for this. It carries deoxygenated blood. Secondly, 1 mark here you are going to get for saying it carries deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to the lungs. Yes? So are you clear? These are things you will make. See, these are small things that you tend to miss out, which is why I want you to put a star mark, right? And I will be sharing the PDF, so not to worry about it. Are we clear? We'll go on to the second question. Yes? Question number 2 on your screen. Yes? Question number 2. Now, of course, we see that in this particular question, right? Ma'am, for 1 mark, can we write one word? 1 mark questions are normally objective questions that you get. So you just need to write either the option or you will have to write down the option along with the answer. So 1 mark is always objective questions in both. 2 marks you have to write as per the marks, right? Because some 2 mark questions that are there, you can write pages and pages. But here you need to be very to the point, right? Being to the point is important. Yes? Ma'am, what carries blood from right atrium to right ventricle? See, from right atrium to right ventricle, normally because it's going within the heart, there is muscular contraction and relaxation. So contraction of the atria or the walls of the atrium will force the blood to go from atrium to ventricle. And that's why we have valves which are present between atrium and ventricles to prevent backflow, right? In MCQs, you do not need to write explanation. You just need to give the answer, okay? Now let's go on. Now see, this is a question which has come for 2 marks. Hello Ansh, I hope you are doing well. Anshul, I hope you are doing well, right? So now of course, as you can all see, with the help of a schematic flow chart. Students, you remember in life process, especially when respiration was being taught, Ankita ma'am would have shown you a particular flow chart which is there, right? A flow chart which is there in the PDF, in your textbooks. So if the PDF is there and you have it with you, please make sure that you star mark it, right? That PDF is that particular flow chart that is there is very, very important, right? Especially when it's showing about how there is breakdown of glucose to provide energy. And here, of course, as you can all see, in the presence of oxygen and in the lack of oxygen, right? So in this particular case, as we can all see, we know that glucose is first broken down into an intermediate. Glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, is broken down into a 3-carbon structure, which is called as pyruvate. And in the presence of oxygen, we know that complete breakdown of this pyruvate happens, giving us ATP, which is nothing but the energy currency. Now, many of you will ask me what is ATP, which is why I am writing this down. ATP is nothing but adenosine triphosphate, right? And here, of course, we see that this pyruvate is completely broken down in the mitochondria in the presence of oxygen. So, if you write this, right, you will get 1 mark. Are we all paying attention? There is no Krebs cycle or any, of course, Krebs cycle is involved, but board exams pay, you don't need to mention that. Yes? So now, of course, 1 mark for writing in the presence of oxygen. Now, let's move on to the second part, in the lack or absence of oxygen. Now, absence of oxygen, we know normally anaerobic respiration takes place, right? And we know that we see that the process that we utilize here is fermentation, right? So now, of course, in lack of oxygen, especially in our muscle cells, we see that lactic acid is produced and ATP is given out. So now, of course, as we all know, if you are mentioning this, right? When you are writing for lack of oxygen, you have to specify which cell may what is happening. So if you are writing lactic acid and ATP and you don't specify muscle cells, you will lose half mark here. So when you are writing these reactions, focus on the place in which the reaction is happening. Mentioning mitochondria for presence of oxygen is important. Mentioning that presence of oxygen is here in the flow chart is important. Yes? Ma'am, should we mention the third part? See, you can mention the third part, say in yeast cells, complete, we see that glucose is broken down to give you, alcohol and all of that. But you will have to do it. Yes? You can add it, but normally if you mention this and this, it is more or less enough, right? Rani, yes, bacha, we will be doing it very soon, not to worry. Yes? How to remember this flow chart? It's very simple. Presence of oxygen to aerobic respiration. That means where it's happening? Mitochondria, right? So it's as simple as that. Ma'am, what are the number of water molecules required in a chemical reaction to break down to produce 1 molecule of glucose, right? So in order to produce 1 molecule of glucose, when you balance it, I think you require about, I'm not able to remember, I normally have to balance it out, but I'm assuming it's 6 molecules, right? I could be wrong, but when you balance it out, you will get to know how many molecules you need. Flow chart, they have told you with the help of schematic flow chart. They don't want explanation. They want you to draw this flow chart. So are you all clear? Yes, are we clear with this question? If you do this, you will get 2 marks in your examination. Easy peasy. See, lack of oxygen means that it is not that oxygen is not there. It's just that oxygen is less, right? Lack, not enough. But absence means there is no oxygen, right? Very good. 2 out of 2, 4 marks in your pocket. So far, we have got 4 out of 4, right? Now, let's move on. Out of 30 marks, we have scored 4 marks. Total 15 questions, 15 into 2, we do 30 marks. You have scored 4 marks so far. Okay? Now, let's move on to question number 3. Now see, question number 3 is a classic example, right? Question number 3 is a classic example of how a question can, this particular question can even come for 3 marks, right? So we see that this right here can come for 3 marks. This can come for a case-based question. I mean, normally it doesn't, because your case-based questions or long answer questions come from heredity, or it can come from normally our environment. But this question is important. See? Name the part of the human excretory system where nephrons are found. Write the structure and function of nephrons. 1 mark for you here, 1 mark for you here. Easy peasy and scoring, right? Ma'am, lack means kami and absence means nahi hona. Correct. Very good. Name the part where nephrons are found. We know that the nephrons that are there are nothing but they are the structural and functional unit of the kidney, right? So we see that nephrons are the filtration units. So where do we find the nephron? We find it in the kidney. Now they're asking us to write about the structure and function of the neuron. Now, nephron. Now if they ask you for structure and function, right? Abhi structure function mein, if you sit and write for 2 marks, that too this particular part is carrying only 1 mark. If you sit and write nephron has glomerulus, nephrons has Bowman capsule, then nephron has tubular part, and then after that you write that Bowman's capsule pe ye hoga, then we see this happens, then this happens. You are writing way more than what is necessary, right? So here they are being very specific, right? They are asking you what is the structure, what is the function. They don't want you to give you an elaborate answer, right? So as we all know, when you are writing, you need to write it very briefly, right? You can just say that nephrons are tubular in structure and they are responsible for formation of urine. Or you can also add in by saying that they are responsible for the filtration of blood, right? You can say filtration of blood, or you can say removal of urea and formation of blood, right? So you can pay attention to, or you can add these 2 extra pointers to your answer. But you just need to write 2. Ma'am, do we need to make diagram also? Students, Sritama, focus. They've not asked you. Until and unless they say draw the diagram, you don't need to draw. And 2 marks may especially you have to be as specific as possible. Somebody asked me, ma'am, will double circulation ka diagram come? The schematic diagram can come, Anish. So you will have to focus on that, right? Ayush, I will answer your question, but can I answer it towards the end? Yes? Ansh, can you kindly not spam? I request you to not spam, right? Different ways in which glucose is oxidized to provide energy in various organisms. So Ayush, just to take Ayush's question to go back, in different organisms, we know that if aerobic respiration takes place, right, especially in higher eukaryotic organisms, we know that this is one way in which it can get oxidized, or we see that formation through lactic acid in yeast, in our cells, of course. In other organisms like yeast and bacteria, which have the ability to do anaerobic respiration, we see that this is a formation, right? So that is one way. Now let's move on. Are we all clear? So third question you have got 6 out of 30 marks. 6 marks in your pocket, right? All right. Let's move on to question number 4. Now question number 4 is also a PYQ, but this is a little bit indirect, right? Yes, I will share the PDF with all of you in the Telegram channel. Link is available in the description below. Now students, let's focus on this, right? Ashu, koi free nahi hai, abhi class pe focus kijiye. Thank you. Zia, many others. If you don't want to focus in class, it's okay. Ma'am, if question comes for 3 marks or 5 marks, see, in questions which come for long answer format like 3 and 5, if they ask you, questions will normally come with subparts. Okay, so you don't think that it will be like one direct thing. It may come with subparts, but it's normally like certain questions with a diagram and supporting with it. It will be good if you draw a supporting diagram. But don't worry, we will be doing those questions. Okay, so don't take stress about it. But ideally, wherever the question or wherever you need to support it with a diagram, I would, likely suggest that. Medulla and cortex are just 2 regions of the kidney. It is not there for CBSE board, so you don't need to worry about it. It was just marked as a part of that. Okay, ma'am, for questions, let's go on. Now, see, many of you have not understood this particular question, right? Now, what ensures sufficient exchange of gases in plants? Now, we are talking about where or what is the structure, right? What is the structure that helps largely with gaseous exchange? Let me rephrase it and simplify the question for you. Which will help us with gaseous exchange? Can you tell me now? When we talk about gaseous exchange in plants, what is the first structure that comes to our mind? Exactly. So the first part of the question here or the answer is stomata, right? Abhi stomata, or we know that there are many various pore-like structures which are there in the leaf. Now next up they are saying, state the condition on which the direction of gaseous exchange depends on, right? So now, if gaseous exchange has to happen, what do we mean by gaseous exchange? We know that that means entry and exit, right? How do we decide that this exchange is going to happen, right? What decides it? Can you tell me? Question is asking us what decides it, right? Many of you are telling me, ma'am, diffusion is there. Very good, right? Depends upon concentration of gases, atmospheric conditions. Very good. Exactly. So here when you talk about it, we know that in stomata gaseous exchange happens. But how do we decide in which direction the gas goes? It depends upon from high concentration, because we know that it is happening by the process of diffusion, which means it's going from high concentration to low concentration, right? So the concentration of gases is one thing. Apart from that, we also know that at one point even the atmospheric conditions play an important role, which is why you need to mention these two. So 1 mark you will get for saying stomata is where gaseous exchange happens. Second point, the conditions in which direction of gaseous exchange takes place depends upon difference in concentration. Or you can write that depends upon concentration gradient, and you can also write certain atmospheric conditions, right? So they also have an impact upon how much it happens, right? The environmental conditions that are there. So everybody, this is a very simple question, but they have not asked you directly. You have to read the question word by word, right? So this right here is something which is very important. Abhi now out of 30 marks, you have got 8 marks. Yes, 8 marks full you have got. That means in just 4 questions you have answered and got the answer correctly. So well done all of you, well done. Environmental conditions also you can write down, Aditya, that is correct. Okay, are we ready to move on to question number 5? Yes, ma'am, guard cells क्यों नहीं? See, stomata जो structure होता है उसमें guard cells. So of course when you say efficient exchange, we know that you can write guard cells or stomata. Both पे तो you can get marks, but I would prefer stomata, right? Because they are the pores through which it happens. Yes, you can mention opening and closing of stomata also. That is also there. Rani Bacha, can I tell you towards the end of the class? MCQs are already done, Shivam, by Ankita ma'am. It is available in the chapter. I mean, it's available in the channel. Yes. Yes, I will be fast from now. Okay? Moving on. How do desert plants perform photosynthesis if their stomata remain closed during the day? Now, this is a very important pointer that we have discussed while learning about photosynthesis, right? So everybody, this right here is a very, very important pointer. There are 2 points you have to mention while talking about it. So first and foremost, right, when we talk about this, you will have to mention why is it that stomata is closed in the morning. You have to establish why is it that stomata is closed in the mornings, because we know that in desert plants, because of the extreme conditions, we know that in the morning it's very, very hot, and they need to and they live in places where there's not enough water, which is why we know that they need to conserve as much as water as possible, which is why we know that the stomata remain closed, right, to reduce the rate of transpiration. Now, apart from that, we also see that during the nights, the stomata is open. So, they take in the carbon dioxide, right? And they briefly store it in a different form. Okay, they take up the carbon dioxide and they convert it to something else, which is called as malic acid, right? Or we call it as malate also. So malate would also be another word that you come in. Yes. So what they do is they'll convert it into malate and they will store it and keep it. Then in the presence of sunlight, when they have the water, they will split the water, and then finally, of course, glucose is formed. right? Which is why we see that in desert plants, the stomata remain closed during the day to prevent loss of water by transpiration, which is why we see that they store carbon dioxide in their cells until the sun comes out, and then they carry out the photosynthesis during the daytime. So they take in the carbon dioxide at night. So that is something that you will have to write upon and focus. Yes, very good, Fatima. You can write it in that manner also. So with this, of course, as you see, you've got 10 out of 30 in 5 marks. Yes. So shall we pick up the pace a little bit, because I do understand that now I'm going at a little slightly slower pace. But so far, students, are you finding this helpful, right? So that's what I want to understand. Are you all finding this helpful when we are understanding how to not only apply the concept, but how to sort of, write the answer also, and what are the key pointers? Yes, Prakriti, we will be fast, but there are students who need some explanation, which is why I'm going at the pace in which students will understand, right? Yes. So we know that in desert plants which are found in the desert, extreme conditions. If extreme conditions, that means less water, high temperature, and there can be loss of water through transpiration, right? Which is why, as we all know, we see that the stomata remains closed in the morning to reduce transpiration. Night it will open, take all the carbon dioxide it needs, and then of course it will store it in as an intermediate form. Very good, Kashish, very good. Yes. All right. Now let's move on to question number 6. Okay. Very simple and easy. Okay. Intermediate means in between. It is not fully formed. It is in between. Yes. Now, of course, let's move on. Yes, Neha, I will take your question. This is very simple. Cakewalk question this is. But you know that the salivary, the concept on digestion is an important concept for all of you to study, right? So as you all know, the question is, give the name of the enzyme which is present in the fluid in our mouth cavity. Okay, they are asking us for the enzyme which is present where? Fluid in our mouth cavity. State the gland which produces it, and of course what would happen to digestion process if this gland stops secreting the enzyme. So now you have 1, 2, 3 parts to this question. So ये first 2 parts के लिए आपको 1 mark मिल जाएगा, and for this part you will get 1 mark, right? And look at how I have identified all the keywords, so that this right here is something you make it. So when you identify the keywords, you will know that this is what the question is asking for, right? Rockstar Gaming, when I take a doubt board, I will take this particular part, right? I'll not ignore any of you. I will take the doubt board so that you can ask your questions. So now give the name of the enzyme present in the fluid, right? What is the fluid present in our mouth? It is saliva. What is the enzyme present in saliva? It is salivary amylase, right? And what is the gland which produces it? It is nothing but the salivary glands, right? Now here they're asking what would happen to digestion process if they stop secreting the enzyme. So then you need to know what is the function of salivary amylase. So salivary amylase acts on the starch in our food and breaks it down into simple sugar. So if salivary amylase is not there, this will not get digested. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? So you have to write this in 3 points. Yes, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So first point pe you have to underline your salivary amylase produced by salivary glands. You will get 1 mark for this. Now, salivary glands are unable to produce salivary amylase. Digestion of carbohydrates will be hampered in the body. 1 mark for this. Total of 2 marks you will get in this manner. So, this is how your teacher is going to correct it, right? So, now with this, of course, everybody, 12 out of 30 marks you have all scored. Well done, all of you. Well done. Ma'am, would a captioned explanation suffice for a 3-mark diagrammatic explanation? School world, until and unless the question asks you for the diagram, right? Sometimes they will be very specific with a schematic diagram or with a well-labeled diagram, explain the process, right? So that if they don't do or if they don't ask you because of time, right? Because understand that although biology comes for 30 marks in your board exam, doesn't mean that you spend all the time for every question you draw a diagram. Draw the diagram only wherever it's necessary, right? Only wherever it's necessary, draw the diagram. If it is asking for it, draw it, okay? Draw it. And when you draw it also, first write the answer, then draw the diagram. That is always the, the flow that I would always prefer for paper presentation. Schematic means as a flowchart types or a simplified diagram. Hampered means it gets affected. Yes, there are 3 pairs of salivary glands. Very good, Kashish, and very good all of you for giving me the answers. Now, shall we move on to question number 7? Yes, no problem, Laksaya. It's okay. We're just getting started. हाँ Shivam, we will do one marker also. Don't worry. अभी channel पे है, but we will do more questions also. So don't worry about it. Super simple question. Write one specific function of each of the following organs with respect to excretion in humans. Neha had a doubt with respect to excretion. You can ask me your doubt right now. But now here, as you can see, 4 parts are there. Abhi, if you have 4 parts, half mark for each function. Okay? You will get half mark for each function. Now, this is the best thing about having subparts in your question. Marks get divided. So that way, if you see, you just need to make sure that you look at it one by one, right? So first and foremost, we have the renal artery, right? What does the renal artery bring? Renal artery brings in oxygenated blood, but it also brings in the urea, or it brings in the blood that needs to get filtered, right? So we see that impure blood, right? Or you can see that it brings in, or I can say it brings in blood that needs to be filtered. Yes? Now, what is the function of the urethra? Yes? Yes, I will do that. So, as we all know, what is the function of urethra? We know that urethra is the small opening which is present at the end of the urinary bladder. And we know that through the urethra, we expel or we release out the urine from our body, right? So, we know that the urine is released outside. You have to mention that. Outside the body through the urethra. Yes, so it is the site of expelling of urine. Yes. So now you have glomerulus. Now we know that first and foremost glomerulus that is there, right? We know that the glomerulus is the part of the nephron, which is the filtration unit, right? So the glomerulus that is there would appear to be something like this. Yes, I always call it as a tuft of capillaries, right? Or it is a bundle of capillaries. So we see that it is nothing but bundle of capillaries. Yes. And we see that this glomerulus that is there, it will sit on the Bowman's capsule. Alright. So this right here is the Bowman's capsule. Now we see that the renal artery, when it brings in, it will branch out into arterioles, and finally we see that it results in the formation of the glomerulus. Now here we see that there is a difference in the diameter of the the blood vessels which start to form the glomerulus and that end, right? So we see that due to this difference, we see that there is a pressure which gets created. Yes. So what is the function of the glomerulus? Glomerulus is nothing but it is the site of filtration, right? So we see that here the process of filtration happens. Now what happens is that when the blood enters, slightly, because what happens is that the size of the I think it's the other way around. See that it will be narrow and then it gets broad, right? My bad. It becomes narrow and then it gets broad. So what happens is that when it gets narrow here, we see that at this point, the pressure starts to build, right? So we see that there is increase in pressure. Yes. So we see that there's an increase in pressure due to constriction of the blood vessels or size of diameter. Because of this, we see that there is filtration of blood takes place, where all the large molecules, right? All the large molecules will get filtered out, or I would say all the molecules that are there, like all your important ones along with your urea, they all get filtered out. And then finally, we see that at the tubular part of the nephron, whatever is necessary for our body, all the important glucose, proteins, ions, whatever is necessary along with some amount of water gets reabsorbed. Right? So that's why we say that this is the function of glomerulus. Abhi Bowman's capsule basically acts as a passageway into the tubular part of your nephron. Yes? Okay. So with this, everybody, we write the functions in this manner. But are we all clear with the structure function of nephron? Yes? Now, of course, in case if you still have some more doubts with this particular part, because I know excretion is tough, please go back and watch where excretion in one shot is done, so that all of you are able to make points or all the important pointers. Yes? Alright, so with this, of course, 2 marks for all of you, right? Who absorbs the nutrients? See, important, there are different parts in tubular part also, okay? But the tubular part of the nephron reabsorbs it. Yes? You can say PCT and DCT, Anish, but the thing is in CBSE, because they don't mention PCT and DCT, I would suggest that we stick to it. Ma'am, why can't it be reabsorbed in Bowman's capsule? What is the need of reabsorption? Because Bowman's capsule does not have the ability, to do that, right? Bowman's capsule is just a structure where your glomerulus sits in, and then it's permeable enough to allow things to go into the remaining part of the nephron, which is why reabsorption is necessary. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one. So far you are at 14 out of 30 marks. So you are at this point. Let's go on to the next one. Explain any brief 2 ways by which leaves of a plant help in excretion. Now this is very easy, right? This is very, very simple. This is very, very easy. Yes? So as we all know, we're talking about leaves of a plant in excretion, right? Now leaves they are specific. So if you say resin, gum and all, may or may not be, because normally we find that in the stem. So one way in which what do we see? We know that various ways in which excretion happens is either by releasing excess salt, or we see that there is diffusion of gases, loss of water, release of resin and gum, and shedding of plant parts, right? So as we all know, shedding of plant parts like shedding of leaves is one way in which leaves help in excretion. Another way, of course, is transpiration. Diffusion of gases also is something we see in the case of leaves, right? Because we know that the stomata that are there, we know that carbon dioxide, which is actually a waste byproduct or a waste product, right? Waste product of these process of photosynthesis comes out through your stomata, which is why in this case you can write this also as one pointer. But now they only want you to write 2 ways. So you can choose any 2, right? Gums and resin secretions may or may not be, because here they are specific to leaves. Normally gums and resin secretions comes out through the stem, right? Which is why you can write any out of the 3 points that we discussed. So excretion in plants can happen via leaves in the following manner. So transpiration, where excess water is released outright. So excess water is released in the form of water vapor through the aerial parts of the plant, and it is lost through the leaves. And secondly, by shedding of leaves as well, right? So everybody take a quick screenshot as well. They can excrete through lenticels also. Yes, Priyanshu. So we know that through lenticels it can happen, but here leaves also contribute. Sasuke, I really hope you tell me your real name, right? I find it very weird to call you Sasuke, but still, right? How does loss of water happen in excretion? What is excretion? Removal of metabolic waste, right? So here, as we all know, whenever there is release of excess water, right? Excess water is something that we don't need, right? Or the plants don't need. So removal of excess water from the aerial parts of the plant is what we call as transpiration. So that is unnecessary. They are removing it. So it's excretion. Yes? Deleted portion, evolution portion is deleted, right? Yes, evolution and heredity is really deleted, and I will discuss it once again towards the end also, all the deleted portion as well. Okay, PCT stands for proximal convoluted tubule. DCT is distal convoluted tubule, right? Yes, at the end of the day, excretion is a process through which metabolic waste is removed out from the body. Very good. All right, so now we are at 16 out of 30 marks. My promise to you to finish in half an hour has gone long ago. Probably will take some more time. Okay, let's pace it up. In the process of digestion of food in humans, there are 2 protein digesting enzymes which are secreted. Name the enzymes along with the glands that secrete them. 1 mark here for naming the enzymes. You have 1 mark for writing the glands. So what are the enzymes? Because we know that this is very, very important. Ashu Bacha, friends are studying. You also study. Very good. So your 2 enzymes which are protein digesting are pepsin and trypsin, right? So pepsin and trypsin are responsible for digestion of proteins. Now your stomach and pancreas are responsible, right? So as we all know, stomach here is responsible for producing your pepsin, and it is a part of your gastric juice. Pancreas produces pancreatic juice, which is responsible for the secretion of trypsin. Easy peasy. If you write this, you will get 2 marks, right? 2 enzymes are pepsin and trypsin secreted by stomach and pancreas respectively. What is the function of trypsin? Breakdown of proteins into smaller peptides or peptones. Yes? But here complete digestion. Both of them don't do complete digestion. Complete digestion happens much later, right? So now of course here you are at 18 out of your 30 marks, right? I hope I've been calculating everything correctly. Oh, this is a very, very important question. Students, please, right? Please make sure all of you star mark this question because these 2 points are very, very important. Yes? First and foremost, why is it important to prevent oxygenated and deoxygenated blood from mixing in birds and mammals? Second part of it is which animals can tolerate some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. On what factor does the body temperature of these animals depend upon? This right here is very, very important. Yes, this question I'm telling you, this will come in objective, this will come as a normal MCQ, this can come as assertion reason, this can come for 2 marks. And this is a very commonly asked question in the examination, right? So let's have a look at the first part. Why is it important, especially in birds and mammals, that there should be no mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood? Now, in both birds and mammals, if you see, right? So if I talk about birds and mammals, we see that both birds and mammals have a 4-chambered heart, right? But structurally, the heart also has some differences, okay? Now, along with that, we also see that birds and mammals that are there, they are warm-blooded, right? They are warm-blooded animals. Now, what do I mean by warm-blooded animals? It means that these birds and mammals have a constant body temperature. And we see that for maintaining this constant body temperature, we see that the transportation of blood has to be pretty efficient, right? So here we see that there is a separation. With the separation, or because there is no mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, it helps in maintaining the body temperature, right? So we see that birds and mammals don't perform single circulation, animals kingdom, they perform we see that double circulation takes place, right? Where the heart goes through the blood twice. The blood goes through the heart twice. Sorry. Yes, because they need to maintain the constant body temperature. Then what are the animals which can tolerate some mixing of blood? Can you tell me? Yes, Udita has given me the answer. Ma'am, amphibians, because they are cold-blooded. Exactly. Amphibians, to an extent, even reptiles, right? We see that these have the ability to maintain. Yes, they have the ability to tolerate some amount of mixing of blood, right? Now, what is a factor on which the body temperature of these animals depend on? Now, your reptiles, your amphibians, and even your fishes, right? We see that all of these three, we call them as cold-blooded animals, right? Which means that they don't have a fixed body temperature, or I'll say no fixed body temperature. Now, why is that so? If they don't have a fixed body temperature, that body temperature changes with respect to the surroundings, which is why we see that they are able to tolerate some amount of mixing of blood, right? So when you're writing the answer, everybody take a screenshot for this particular question because this right here is very, very important, right? So as you can see, separation is necessary as it allows highly efficient transport or supply of oxygen to the body. Useful because they have high energy needs wherein they need to use energy constantly to maintain their body temperature. Now in the case of amphibians and reptiles, they can endure a certain amount of mixing, right? And we see that they change their body temperature with respect to the surroundings. Students, take a screenshot right now. I'm not covering the information. So take a screenshot because this point is very important. This question is very, very important, right? Very commonly asked question in the examination. And I'm telling you, I think I can put a bet and say that one short question will come in the board exams. Even in your unit test, midterms, preparatories, this kind of question is bound to come. So once you take a screenshot, let me know in the comments below that you are done and we can get started, right? Very good, very good. So far now we are at what? 20 out of 30. 10 more marks, 5 more questions. We will wind it up very soon. Yes? Very quickly, question to take. Ma'am, does trypsin break protein into amino acids? Not necessarily. It'll break it down into smaller peptides, right? So it'll break it down into smaller peptides. Ma'am, amino acid is NH2? No, amino acid has a very complicated formula. NH2 is a, a functional group that is there. Yes? Which you will learn. When Akriti ma'am takes you carbon and compound, she will teach you all about it. Functional groups and everything she will tell you. 5 more questions and we are done. Okay, 5 more questions, Shaza. But before that, students, everybody, if you are enjoying this particular class, do not forget to hit the subscribe button on this video. Most importantly, I hope you have hit the like button as well, because that's how you will show me your love, right? Yes. Now, this is a very easy question on transportation again, right? So, as we all know, what do the following transport? So easy. Your 2 marks is in your pocket. Again, half mark, half mark, half mark, half mark here for all of you, right? So, now you have xylem, phloem, pulmonary artery and aorta. Now, what is responsible? What does xylem transport? Now, we know both xylem and phloem are your vascular bundles which are present in the plants, right? So, xylem here is responsible for transporting water and minerals. Yes, it transports water and minerals, but I would also request that you add in, right? Write a complete answer. Water and minerals from roots to the upper parts of the plant, right? From where to where also, if you write, it gives in an additional, right? It will add a little more value. That means your examiner will know that, oh, you know what you are talking about, right? So it will not just, it will mean that your marks, the chances of getting good marks will be better. So always be specific with your answer in biology, right? So from roots to upper parts of plant. Secondly, you have phloem. What is responsible for phloem? Phloem transports food, right? So, transports food from leaves to all parts of the plant, you can say, to all the other parts of the plant, right? Because we know that in the case of xylem, transport is unidirectional, right? So here we see that it is unidirectional, while in the case of phloem, it is bidirectional. That means in xylem, it is going only in one direction, while in phloem, it will go both up as well as down, right? Control coordination, Sanjana, soon we'll be taking. Okay? So that is 1 mark for all of you. Now the remaining 1 mark comes from pulmonary artery and aorta. Abhi, pulmonary artery, that is there, right? What is pulmonary artery? It is your exception. Pulmonary artery, we also discussed it in the first question. Transports your deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to the lungs, right? So that is what it transports. Now, of course, you have aorta. Aorta transports oxygenated blood. See, if you just write blood, half mark cut there only, okay? Because if you say, this transports this blood and that blood, then you will lose half mark. You have to specify at all times it is oxygenated or deoxygenated. I know you will tell me, Arey ma'am, who will make that mistake? Sometimes students tend to make silly mistakes in that speed of writing, right? So now, of course, we see that oxygenated blood is transported from left ventricle to all other parts, right? Or to all other parts of the body. All right. So with this, of course, everybody, as we all know, right? We see that if you write all of this, of course, is not fully correct. But now you know, right? You have to write the from and to also for all of this, which we have already discussed. So this way, you have got 22 out of 30 marks today. Largest artery is called as aorta. Very good. Ma'am, can you make a transportation system in humans? Sanjana, I've done a one-shot on this. Ankita ma'am has taken a detailed class. You can check it out in the channel. I'm sure it will be helpful. Now, I would like to take one particular question which I wanted to take, right, about valves, because I think it was a good time to discuss that. Ma'am, if valves are present only in veins, how does the blood go to our head through arteries, as blood can flow backwards? Good question. But see, arteries that are there, right? So if this is your heart, a very simple, or rather, whenever I tell you what is an artery, right? What will I tell you? I always tell you artery is a blood vessel that transports blood away from the heart, right? I always define an artery as a vessel that transports blood away from the heart. That means that arteries have the ability. Arteries do not have any valves because they are originating, or they're going from the heart. And the heart being a pump, we see that will pump the blood in such high pressure. So there is no need for valves. It is able to go against gravity because of the pressure in which it's pushing, right? Now imagine if I have the sanitizer bottle and I put lot of pressure on this and I squeeze it, then you see that the blood gets pumped, right? Due to the pressure I am applying, even though gravity is there, it will go against gravity. So it is as simple as that. Animal kingdom, I have a question on that, which is why I will not take that question right now. Okay? Function of valves prevents the backflow of blood, right? Yes. Ma'am, can we add from and to? You have to add from and to. Please add that as well, right? Okay. Osmotic pressure. Osmotic pressure is basically the pressure that gets created due to difference in concentration that facilitates the osmosis process, right? So, Shrijan, that is what we say. Yes, yes, you have to add from and to. Moving on, very, very important question. How are lungs designed in the human beings to maximize the area for exchange, right? Now, of course, we're talking about how does it facilitate exchange of gases. Now, this is there in 2016, but let me tell you, this is a very commonly asked question, right? Why is it that in our lungs, what is there in our lungs that facilitate this? Exactly. So we know that inside the lungs, we have millions of air sac-like structures called as alveoli. Now, of course, if you notice, we know that we don't have one single large alveoli, but rather we have millions of small, tiny air sac-like structures. The reason being that because we have small but many air sac-like structures, we see that they provide increased surface area for absorption, right? Which is why in this particular case, the lungs, we see that inside the lungs, the bronchioles end in these air sac-like structures called as alveoli. And we know that there are millions of alveoli in our body which are richly supplied with blood vessels. Now we know that there are many such alveoli that increase the surface area for absorption. Thereby they maximize gaseous exchange within the lungs, right? So that is how we see that the lungs in turn maximize the area for gaseous exchange. So I do see some doubts, but I will make sure that I answer the doubts towards the end of the class. I want to wind it up as soon as possible, right? Yes. Now, ma'am, should we make diagram or only write answer? You have to only write the answer because they are not asking you. If they say that, they'll say with a supporting diagram. And since this is only for 2 marks, you don't need to worry too much, right? So as you can all see, so far 24 out of 30 marks easily scored in the body. I mean, easily scored, right? I just said easily scored in the body. Okay, now of course many of you, artery, vein, ma'am, all of those doubts, I'm taking it now. List in tabular form. That means you have to draw a table. If you don't draw a table, they may cut half mark for you, right? So as you all know, there are three differences between arteries and veins, okay? Now, what do I tell you? I'm telling you artery and vein. You don't need to write about anything else, right? So you only tell me. So you have artery and then you have vein, right? Now, I just told you first and foremost from where to where, right? So as you all know, arteries that are there, they are responsible for transporting blood, transports blood away from heart, right? And you can say primarily transport oxygenated blood. And you can write the exception also. Here you can say exception is your pulmonary artery. Yes? Then you can say that here we know that the walls are thick, right? Arteries have thick walls because of course they have to withstand the pressure because it originates from the heart. We know that at this point it has to withstand that pressure. And we see that there are no valves which are present. Yes, you can also write that arteries are deep-seated. Now, on the other hand, when you write about veins, we know that they bring blood towards the heart, right? Or they bring it to the heart, I could say. Now, of course, as we all know, we see that they primarily transport your deoxygenated blood. Yes. And of course, you can write your exception, which is the pulmonary vein that only transports your oxygenated blood. Then we know that walls are thin, right? Walls of the veins are thin. And of course, we know that backflow of blood can happen here, which is why valves are present. I have given you 4 points of difference. Yes? Yes, another thing you can write is high pressure, right? High pressure, blood flows through high pressure in arteries while it flows through low pressure in veins, right? Yes, are we all clear? Backflow means ulta direction. If blood has to go like this, it can go in the reverse direction, right? Yes, okay. So now, of course, everybody, if you want to take a screenshot right now, you can quickly take a screenshot. What is the most common reaction that happens in our body? Regularly, if you see, respiration is commonly happening, so you could say respiration, right? All right. Okay, just give me 1 minute. I'm going to take doubts towards the end, right? So when you're writing the answer, you can write it in a tabular form, right? Now, many of you ask me, ma'am, what is the difference between an artery and a capillary? Going back, arteries branch out to form arterioles, which end up forming the thinnest form of blood vessel, which is capillaries, which is just one single cell thick. And at the capillaries, we know that exchange takes place, right? So this right here, of course, 3 differences in 2 marks. So here what they normally do, right? I mean, normally this is an old question. Like you said, it's CBSE 2016. It's a pretty old question. But concept of artery and vein and capillaries will come for assertion reason questions normally. And of course, they can ask you 2 markers, but they'll be little more specific, okay? So now, of course, we have got 26 out of 30. 2 more questions, bachas, and we will wind up, right? Okay. Very, very important question. Question number 14. List the events of proper sequence that takes place during the process of photosynthesis. Divya and Tanumanu, I will take your questions at the end of the class, okay? So now we are talking about list of events in proper sequence. So now, of course, here, right, when we talk about it, we have to write about the steps of photosynthesis in proper chronology, right? So first and foremost, we know that first thing that happens is, of course, you can write about how, if an additional point you want to write, you can start with how water is absorbed by the roots and it's transported to the leaves, but through the xylem, and carbon dioxide that is there is taken in through the stomata by the process of diffusion. Then, of course, we know that there is absorption of light energy by chlorophyll, followed by which there is conversion of light energy into chemical energy. Then we know that splitting of water molecules takes place. And last but not the least, there is reduction of carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. So you need to write these steps. And step number 2 will take 1 mark because, as you know, there are 2 things you have to mention, right? Not only conversion of light energy into chemical, but we also see that there is splitting of water molecules, right? So I would also recommend you add in how the your raw materials are obtained. It also gets easy, right? Okay. So now, as we all know, you write all these points, you will get 2 marks easily. Yes? Okay. Jill, if you rewind this video to the beginning, I have shown you the timetable, bacha. I will show it to you once towards the end as well, right? So now, of course, we are at 28 out of 30. Last question for all of you. Yes? Now, I know the flowchart looks very small, but this is an additional question that we are looking at. Complete the following flowchart as per the instructions. So, to make it big for all of you, we see that they're talking about the gastric glands which are present, right? Now, many of you asked me the difference between glands and organs. Organs are structures which are made up of different kinds of tissues. But if they have the ability to secrete certain chemicals, right? Now, it could be an organ, it could just be a group of cells. Then we call it as a gland, right? So now you have to write the secretions of gastric glands. You have A, B, C. Then you have D, E, F, which is the functions, right? So what are the secretions of gastric glands? First, tell me A, B, C. Yes, now you have a bigger one here. A here. Now, A, B, C could be of any order. Okay, now I'm telling you that A, B, C could be of any order, but your D, E, F should match, that's all. Now, A could be HCl or hydrochloric acid, B could be pepsin, and C could be mucus, right? Now, just write the respective functions, yes? So, as we all know, right, we know that A that is there is, if it is HCl, then we know that the function of HCl is to make sure that it gets rid of unwanted germs that enter along with our body, right? And of course, it also helps in activation of pepsinogen. See, yes, it will be pepsinogen only, but now technically if you think about it, gastric juice is released when there's a lot of food within the body, right? So at that point, if your HCl is also released, it activates your pepsinogen. So pepsin would be the answer, but if you write pepsinogen, it could be a little tricky. So as per your NCERT, you can write pepsin. It's okay. Yes? Now next you have pepsin that is there. Now what is the function of pepsin? We know that it is nothing but breakdown, right? It is nothing but the breakdown of proteins. Then we have mucus here. What is the function of mucus? It is nothing but to provide protection to the inner walls, right? So it provides in protection to the walls. All right. So now with this, of course, everybody complete the flow chart. First I have written A, B, C. Then I have written D, E, F separately, right? Okay, so with this everyone, as we all know, you have all scored 30 out of 30 in today's class. Are we all feeling proud? Yes or no? I will give you 5 stars for all my students for doing really well today. Yes? All right. Ma'am, class 9 bio and SST, we need to speed up. Yes, we will be speeding up. Yes? So very quickly, I want to take a few doubts, but students who want to leave right now, you can leave or you can stay for the doubt clearing session. I'm going to take 2 minutes of time to take a doubt board right now. So first and foremost, what is translocation of plants? Translocation, that is nothing but the transport of food, right? And we see that in this particular process, we know that food is transported or glucose is transported in the form of sucrose, wherein we know that due to difference in osmotic gradient, we see that food is transported. Explain all enzymes. It's going to be tough, but basically somebody wanted to know what are enzymes, right? Enzymes are nothing but biocatalysts. Now catalysts are nothing but substances that increase the rate of a reaction, but they don't get involved in it. And if it's a biocatalyst, that means it's present in living organisms. Now, of course, how to make a clean diagram for board exams? For diagrams, you have to practice a lot, right? Yes. Is mucus an enzyme? No, mucus is not an enzyme. Do pepsin and trypsin have more or less the same function? Yes. But basically, we see that you have two different kinds because whatever pepsin couldn't break down, trypsin will act on it, or to make sure that proper functioning takes place, we see that will be there. Does an atrioventricular septum exist? No. So you see that a septum that is there normally exists like this, right? I mean, we see that there is your right atria, your right ventricle, right? But this way we see that there is a division, of course, but normally we see that it's in the form of valves, right? Yes. Unit tests videos are going to be coming soon. Is excretion and egestion the same? No, they are not the same. Yes? Ma'am, if we write 4 to 5 points on 2 to 3 marks, will they deduct? They'll not deduct marks, but see, your time is very valuable. When you're going to give your science exam, you will not do biology, physics and chemistry separately. You will be giving it together. And normally in physics, you will have numericals coming, which will take more of your time. So try not to unnecessarily waste your time by writing extra, right? Ma'am, function for HCl should we write? You can write both, killing bacteria and activating pepsinogen. Why is double circulation necessary for efficient transport of oxygen? Is peptin active or pepsinogen? Pepsin is active. Pepsinogen is inactive. Emulsification of fat, breakdown of large molecules into smaller molecules, so smaller droplets of fat. Pepsin, I've already discussed. Okay. All right, everybody. So I'm going to give you a quick homework, right? I can see many of you here are quite confused with a few things. So I would like to give you a small homework. But before that, ma'am, to include, what should write with a neat label diagram, different steps involved. You have to do the whole holozoic nutrition school world. Holozoic nutrition in amoeba, you will have to write. Diagram is there in the textbook. Yes? So homework for all my students, right? Now homework here is to write. Let me give you one thing. Okay. What is the function of nephron, right? Give me the answer if you are going to write it for 2 marks, right? So this is something that you need to do. You don't need anything beyond NCERT, but you need to know how to apply your knowledge from NCERT. So we will come with competency-based questions very, very soon. Yes? So that's your homework question, everyone. So of course, as we know, with this, we will be signing off. I hope that all of you found this particular class helpful. If you did, please do not forget to hit the share button and share this with your friends. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel. And of course, I hope you've liked this video, right? Now, quickly showing you the timetable before I sign off, right? This is the timetable that we follow very regularly on the channel. So you can check this out. I will check your homework. Yes, I know I've been telling you I'm going to to check, but I know some homeworks have gone unchecked. But from now on, I'm going to go back to all of it and check your homeworks. Yes? Okay, everybody, with this, I'll be signing off. I will be seeing you soon. But up until then, take care, lots of love, and bye-bye.